Hello and welcome to the 8th edition of IberoDocs, the Ibero-American Documentary Film Festival in Scotland. I'm Mar, IberoDocs director. I am a woman with short hair, and behind me there is a poster with IberoDocs logo. Today we team up with the Scottish Documentary Institute to offer you a free masterclass by Lupe Perez Garcia, director of Never Look Back. This masterclass will take about 1 hour. We will be using 2 different languages, Spanish and English, and will be recorded. If you would like to listen in English or Spanish, please select the language through the interpreting function via the globe symbol at the bottom of your screen, or if you are using a phone, with a left swipe. We also have VCL interpretation by Luis for the first part and Chloe for the second part. So now I'm gonna go to switch to Spanish. Bueno, pues personalmente este es un momento.
Personally, this is a very exciting time for me because we have 2 women here that I really admire, and they've had an influence on my professional career: Lupe Perez Garcia and Mendelle. They're both huge actors in Documentary Film Festival, and they combine teaching with filmmaking, and I'm very happy to have them here at last, and that they can talk about Lupe's film Never Look Back, which is a great example of personal achievement and hybrid cinema. So over to you, Noe.
Thank you, Mar. My name is Noe Mendelle. I'm director of Scottish Documentary Institute. I'm a middle-aged woman with short brown hair, wearing my favorite kind of yellow-green cardigan to make me feel so comfortable. And I've got a very boring white background behind me. So it's my great pleasure today to be able to talk to Lupe Perez. It's been a while that we've been looking at her work and really wanting to establish some form of dialogue between Barcelona and Edinburgh on our passion about documentary. So Lupe, welcome in this virtual Scotland.
Thank you very much, Noe. Thank you, Mar, for this great invite to be here today. I'm very proud to be here speaking to you today. My name's Lupe. I'm a woman of 50 years of age. I'm wearing glasses that I'll take off shortly. I'm from Argentina originally, but I've been living for 20 years now in Catalonia. I'm wearing a black sweater with a white shirt, and I have my bookshelves here behind me. And this bookshelf has already changed twice in my life after I've moved house.
So, Lupe, I would love to hear a little bit about your background. How did you get into filmmaking? And really, what kind of filmmaking have you been doing in the last 20 years?
Bueno, yo creo que convertirse en cineasta es.
I think becoming a filmmaker is a decision you make. It isn't an ability or a skill. It isn't a desire. You might want to do it throughout all of your life, or you might have the ability, but that's not important. The important thing is to take the decision. I want to do this. And I took this decision. I seem to remember. Always loved cinema, but I took this decision to become a filmmaker when I was on a trip visiting a friend in Paris, and she was studying cinema. I visited her for a few days. I saw 2 films in 1997 which really had an impact on me. One was The Taste of Cherries by Estami, and the other one was Reminiscences on a Trip to Lithuania by Johannes Mekas. These 2 films, for some reason, opened up a whole world to me. And I thought, I have to do this. If I had the talent, if I had the knowledge, I could do something like that. And every time I doubt my talent and my abilities, I think of those two films that gave me the push I needed. In terms of what you have asked me, in terms of what I've done in my career, there's a kind of pattern, although I've done very different things. But the pattern is being able to outline through memories this idea of childhood and infancy, this past that now has ceased to exist and that we like to remember, but when we do remember it, we turn it into something that never actually was and something that it never will be. So this seems very sad. It can be pure melancholy, or it can be something that drives you forward, something that gives you new energy and fresh energy to live, strength to live. And it also means that your suitcase is always full of life, because your roots are movable, but they're very deep. My first film is a personal story about my mother, and it deals with Argentine history. The second film is about a woman who rallies against the law of men, a very archaic law. Carmen seems like a completely different film, and I think it's really within my sphere of interest. And it looks at how a vulnerable woman who's exposed to so much danger, so many types of danger, never falls into the most dangerous trap, which is sadness. And getting to know Carmen was a real gift, and it was permission from a personal and professional point of view, to make a melodrama. I give myself license to make a melodrama, which is something I wanted to do for a long time.
We will come back to that notion of kind of nostalgia and melancholy kind of, in your film. But I'm kind of a little bit curious about your biography, because you've spent kind of, many years combining directing for television and once in a while kind of, producing a feature documentary for cinema, for festival. How do you manage kind of combining both, and how does one influence the other?
Bueno, Lupe, la vida te obliga, en mi caso, yo tengo dos
In my
hijos que
case,
mantener.
I've got 2 children to look after, and I couldn't indulge myself as an immigrant. I couldn't get involved in a feature-length film, which can take up to 2 years. So when I had the opportunity to work in television, I accepted it. And I'm so grateful that I did that. It gave me a discipline, a way of working that lots of people criticise because they think it's very quick, it's very instantaneous. You're recording today and the programme comes out on Sunday, for example. However, I think that in that instantaneity there's a lot of richness. It's a lot of richness. And I feel as if I've made about 50 films, not 3. And luckily, the television programmes that I've worked on, there were 3 of them in total. The most important one was a news programme which is called Salvados. It's shown in Spain. And the most significant and important one for me was the programme Clandestino, where I worked with David Berian, and Roberto Fraile was on camera. And these 2 Spanish journalists have recently been killed in Burkina Faso. I wouldn't have met those wonderful people, and I would never have gone on the great adventures that I went on with them. I wouldn't have had the chance to open up that world. I would have only been making my little films without working in television. My grandmother used to say that every day is a gift. And something that might seem like a difficulty at first can always end up being a skill that you acquire.
I completely agree. Every day is a gift, and especially when it's a privilege to direct. In Scotland and in UK in general, it's still a struggle for women to get commissioned to direct feature documentaries. I mean, we're talking about less than 20% of commissions go to women. What's the situation like in Spain for female directors?
Bueno, las compañeras directoras que tengo aquí.
My female colleagues that are also directors, at least the ones I speak to, have always found it very difficult as well. But I have the solution, which is having a female producer. My 3 films were all produced by women, and although I've had many fantastic male bosses, I do understand that sometimes I think the greatest difficulty for female directors is the ability to have confidence in ourselves and our projects. I'm not going to blame us women, I'm not going to blame us for not being able to make films. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, I think those of us that are successful, that's because we have some extra energy, we have some extra self-assurance, self-confidence perhaps.
But we need the money also to be able to realize our ideas.
Sí, pero...
Yes, we need the money. But in this world where you don't sell your idea, you sell yourself. Anyone who's been in a pitch will understand that. You are selling your ability to tell the story, because a good story, well, anyone could have a good story. I think the issue is when someone doesn't like the story, you have to convince them. You have to convince them that this story is worth telling. And in that respect, I think bit by bit, particularly with the grants that we're getting through Spanish legislation, they are helping us to bridge that gap a little bit. And I think it's a good time we're living in at the moment in that respect. But obviously, with the pandemic, the cinema is really, really struggling. And so everything is doubly difficult for women.
It is, yes. So we're going to be talking about your latest film, Never Look Back, Lupe.
I think Carmen is here. She's in the audience.
Fantastic.
Carmen can improvise.
Carmen can come and introduce herself. Hola, Carmen. Great.
Ahora,
That's us. Hello.
Hola.
hola. Decía que muchas gracias.
I just wanted to say thank you very much to this great festival and to Lupe and to all the producers for sharing this dream with you all.
And where are you, Carmen?
¿Cómo estoy?
¿Dónde estás?
Yo estoy en Córdoba,
I'm in Córdoba in Andalusia, in my mother's house,
de donde me crié de pequeñita.
where I grew up as a little girl,
Pueblo que sale en la película.
in the little village that you see in the film.
Aquí con la familia.
So here I am, with my family, in lockdown here.
Lupe, tell me, how did you come across this wonderful Carmen?
Doctora Marta Esteban,
Marta Esteban, the producer, told me that she had met an extraordinary woman and that she didn't know what to do. She knew there was a film to be made there, but she didn't know what kind of film. And without meeting Carmen, I had a lot of thoughts about how to put this film together, looked at lots of references. But when I met Carmen, it was all very clear. It was clear what the film would be. Because she didn't have any kind of limits to impose. She didn't have any kind of shame. She would tell her story very freely. I think she's an artist, and you can see that in how she understands other people's art. There was an issue that seemed curious to me. When we had already made a lot of the film, Marta said to me, "You're very rational, and Carmen is of the land, so you have to meet in the middle," and I think we managed to do that.
A veces, cuando taconeo, siento que me meto en la tierra. Siento que me quedo ahí, clava.
Lo que tengas que hacer, hazlo. No pidas consejo a nadie, hazlo.
Los Andes. Planta, 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 planta. Se cuentan muchas cosas bailando. Y cantando. Y cocinando. Hasta que estos dos hitos estén abiertos y este esté así, no voy a parar de bailar. ¿Y sabes qué? Que menos más que tengo eso.
Brilliant. It's a very energetic kind of trailer. You just want to see the film. Well, Carmen, it's obvious, is an instantaneous kind of lovable character because of her energy, because of her talent. But did you feel that you had enough of a narrative in order to sustain a feature documentary? Or at what stage did you feel that you had enough to really amplify it into a feature?
bueno, hubo un gran proceso.
We went through a long process. A process of taking this narrative of observational cinema, which was telling the present story of Carmen, but we also had to integrate these reconstructions of the past. That was a very significant decision we made, because at the beginning, before we started to film, we were quite frightened of making Carmen suffer by reliving these past events. And we also thought it might not be so credible, that the viewer could feel a bit distant from those feelings. But when we started to work with Carmen, we started to see that every time that we filmed a performance, Carmen relived these moments in a very natural way. It was all very straightforward and actually a very beautiful thing. I'll tell you an anecdote. I hope Carmen doesn't mind. When we started to film, Santiago Conta is here as well, who's the Argentinian producer. When we started filming, one of the options was calling Carmen's ex-boyfriend so that he could play himself in the film. So we were with Carmen, and Carmen put on the speakerphone and phoned him. And he was in Madrid at that time. So I said to Carmen, you speak to him, Carmen, and pretend I'm not here. Let's see what he says. And he said, yeah, of course I'd be delighted. But you have to pay for my flight to Argentina. And I saw Carmen, I looked at Carmen and I said, no way. So when Santiago Conta, our colleague, found out about this, as he had already made a very good friendship with Carmen, he said, I'll do it in his Argentinian accent, I'll play the ex. It was very interesting, because the first thing that we filmed were the sequences between these two. Because I wanted things to be revealed gently and not to have too much information. So Santi asked me, he was worried because he said, I'm not an actor, but what's more, I don't know Carmen's story. And so I said to him, Santi, has someone ever left you? Have you ever left someone in your life? Just speak to her as if she was one of your exes. And when Carmen says something to you that you don't understand, just say to her, I don't understand. And you'll see that the conversation will flow, because couples that separate have stopped understanding each other. We had 3 hours in total of conversation that we'd filmed, and we really didn't know what to use in the film because it was all really beautiful. And within that dynamic, we built the film. The same thing happened with the death of Josefa, Carmen's sister. We went through a process, I wouldn't say of reconstruction, but rather of mourning. So by playing with all of that, we managed to construct this sense of a relived present, so to speak.
It's really interesting, Lupe, because the documentary language that you developed in this film, but which comes also from previous kind of work of yours, is so similar. Kind of the documentary or the reconstruction. I didn't have a clue where I was. Was I in reconstruction? Was I in reality? But I'm saying I didn't have a clue in a positive way, because what it meant was somehow I was in this kind of eternal world of Carmen, and I didn't know if it was her memories or if it was her dreams. And at the end, it kind of felt that the two come together really, the memories and the dreams. So what I'm curious is how did you actually work out the different moments, kind of, from reconstruction to reality? I mean, did you feel I'm going to fill the gaps of reality, or the other way around? You did the reconstructions and then the reality came after. I'm curious, what comes first?
Bueno, la televisión me ha regalado.
Well, television has gifted me this ability to see or judge who can or who is able to relive moments and who isn't. In my experience, everyone can relive things, and everyone has an ability to forget the camera is there and really delve into their role. But it's not about forgetting the camera, actually. I'm not using the right words. It's not about forgetting the camera. It's about understanding that this nucleus that we create between the camera and the sound guy and myself, if we're not crying, then nothing's happening. We can do a close-up when we're there with her, and any fear that I had at the beginning of exposing Carmen too much to these feelings, well, it seemed to me that she was very brave and she gave herself over to me a lot, and that gives you a beautiful responsibility. It's not a burden. Perhaps in documentary cinema, I've suffered a little bit from, shall we say, fundamentalism. Yerno Argentino, my first film, was rejected. It was stopped after 5 minutes by a festival director, who I'll not name, because she said to the person that was showing the film that it wasn't a documentary. I'm talking about 2006 here. Why was it not a documentary then? Basically, because she thought I'd used 2 cameras to film it. I filmed some things with 2 cameras, but I don't do it because it's easier. I do it because I need it. Most of the time, I use just 1 camera. The vast majority of Yerno Argentino was filmed with 1 camera. So that way of working, which from my point of view is a lot more like a documentary than a lot of other observational things that I see made. Now, little by little, this way of working is more common, but at that time I was excluded from some documentary festivals for working that way. And seeing that certain people saw the structure of the film, and there were other people that just watched the film for its own merits, I just said to myself, I want people that just go and watch the film without looking at the structure and obsessing over the structure, because I know the rules myself. I'm a big girl, I'm 50 years of age, and I prefer people to have an emotional reaction, an authentic reaction, and to know that I'm not manipulating them, no one's manipulating them. And there's nothing that is said in the film. Perhaps the odd tiny little thing I said to Carmen that I might have suggested. Carmen was very happy to change whatever I said. And so the original script, of the original script, very little was actually left. So I think it's about filmmaking ethics rather than a judging external gaze, which is criticising the narrative.
Normally, Lupe will say to, producers talking to documentary directors will say, avoid working with performers, avoid working with politicians, because you never get kind of, to the real truth of who they are. And Carmen, of course, is a very intense, kind of exuberant kind of performer who might not work with cameras so often, but she definitely knows how to work with the gaze of other people on her. She knows how to play with it. She knows how to flirt, kind of, with people surrounding her. How did you manage as a director to go beyond that?
Bueno, creo que el primer día que la conocí.
I think the first day I met Carmen, I realised, I don't know if it was the first or second Carmen, can't remember, but I recorded her with my mobile phone. And she never seemed worried about whether she looked beautiful, whether she looked great, whether she looked bad. And that was the case throughout the filming process. A lot of the time, she came up to look at the material we'd filmed, and absolutely never did she say, "Oh, I look terrible," or "You've recorded me without makeup," or anything like that, which is very unusual. Unusual for a woman who works with her body and with her image, to hand herself over like that, to trust a filmmaker like that. And that really gave me a lot of peace of mind. Never never did she take me aside and say, "I'm not going to say this because so and so." Nothing like that ever happened. However, something unusual did happen. When Carmen was talking to the priest, I said to her, "Carmen, would you fancy doing confession with the priest? Would you be brave enough?" And she asked me, "Well, how are you going to film it? I'm willing to do it, but how are you going to film it?" I said to her, "I'll put a microphone on your collar, and if you want to confess to the priest, just go with the microphone and confess." And I don't think that I didn't really convince Carmen with that, because the mechanism of recording it didn't really seem authentic to her. So when I was changing the cameras, I used just one camera, and when I was changing the camera, I heard Carmen telling the priest her life story. So within those 5 minutes of changing the cameras, Carmen didn't follow my idea without telling me, but already it seemed senseless. But it was a very beautiful thing, because I'm sure she hasn't even considered this, but it gave me great peace of mind, because it seemed everyone knew what they were doing. Everyone was taking responsibility and was aware of what they were doing. And it was a filming process that, but I know we always say that everything was perfect, and many times it wasn't, but in this case, well, it was absolutely wonderful from beginning to end.
Can I just interrupt you for... for a second. We are gonna see a clip of the film, if you don't mind, while we are switching the interpreters. Okay, so is this clip ready?
Era cordobesa y se llamaba Carmen. Esa soy yo, compadre. Ahí está. Mírala. Apuntando tirolín. Y era una flamenca graciosa y junca. Cantando y bailando y era incorporable, viento y tapaña y era renombrada. Y andando por el mundo llegó un día a Sevilla. Y vino una fiesta que se celebró. Y mientras bailaban todos muy contentos, mientras ella bailaba, le cantaban todos. Porque tú eres que la Virgen me caga, que estaba puesta en el altar. Porque tú eres que la Virgen me caga, que estaba puesta en el altar. Porque tú eres la Virgen me caga, que estaba puesta en el altar. ¡Ale!
Brilliant. So maybe this is a good place actually to bring Carmen and just to ask Carmen kind of, the difficult moments where emotionally kind of, you were touching kind of, past events which were still kind of very alive in you. Did you find the process of filming a form of healing?
Que perdón, no me he enterado de la pregunta.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yeah. So during the process of filming, Lupe touched moments of your life which were still kind of, painful. And I was wondering if you find the process of filming being a form of healing from that pain.
Lupe, tradúceme.
Lupe, can you translate for me, please?
Dice si ese
She's asking if this filming process was healing for you.
Bueno, quería decir que ante todo,
First of all, as Lupe rightly says, this reliving process was healing. I was never scared of reliving these moments of my life, because I think that if I, as an artist, I'm trying to tell the truth, whether it's about myself or whether about someone else, I think it's a great learning process, because Lupe has really taught me and showed me. We always had a great sense of empathy, Lupe and I. We got on very well, we understood each other, we respected each other, and as Lupe says, Carmen, do a forward roll, and I do a forward roll. Because I knew, I was very secure. I was dreaming of something like this for so long. I was always going to let go and find out what my limits were, for good and for bad. So it has been a very cathartic experience, and it taught me to empathise with the good things that have happened to me and the bad things. Like the breakup of my relationship, the death of my sister. But I think I've learned even more through those experiences. And bad experiences make us stronger. And good things, well, they're always great as well. So I'm very proud of the team and Lupe. I would like to say you're a fantastic woman. You're a role model. In an all-male team, she taught me, or she showed me, how to express your talent and take everything on your shoulders. But she never fell out with anyone. She knew how to put everything in place, and I think we all got on really well. And there was a lot of love in this project, a lot of enthusiasm, and I'm so grateful. I will forever be grateful to everyone that worked on it.
The film is an amazing road movie, which usually tends to be more like a male kind of approach to telling stories. But Lupe, you've managed to twist it into this emotional journey, not just a physical journey. But I'm kind of curious because Carmen's story is, a Spanish woman from Andalusia, kind of, taking her art to Latin America, and you kind of, Latin American woman, kind of, bringing your art kind of, to Spain. Was the fact that, your stories kind of, mirrored each other allow you to go deeper into the emotional journey of Carmen?
Perdón, me tenéis que traducir. ¿No?
Sorry, I have to. Someone has to translate for me. Carmen, at the bottom there's a little world icon, a little globe icon. You have to click on that and select Spanish. You've got it in English just now. Oh, my love. I'm not great with technology. There's a little world. Lupe. There's a little globe icon. But don't worry, Carmen. Listen, Carmen. When they're addressing you, I'll let you know. Okay, my love. I think on the mobile phone, I don't have this little icon. Don't worry.
Yeah,
don't
it's
worry.
different on the mobile.
I'll let you know.
Anyway, the question was for Lupe, really. So,
¿Cuál era la pregunta?
What was the question again?
that somehow your stories, kind of, personal stories mirrored each other, and it's an interesting situation to be for a director.
Sí, bueno, eso fue llamarme, fue idea de Marta Esteban.
Calling me was Marta Esteban's idea, and she always had that in mind in terms of the mirroring of our stories. I think in the case of Never Look Back, what I was talking about before, about a search for our past and for our childhood, is what gives us strength to continue. It was a before and after for me, getting to know the story of the indigenous girls in the film. When Carmen started showing me these little voice notes and messages and photos that she exchanged with these wonderful girls, indigenous girls, I understood at that point, and we understood at that point, that their childhood was very similar to Carmen's, where everything seemed possible. And when we don't realise that we're actually very limited, especially in a village like Encinas Reales, where Carmen comes from, in the south of Spain. And that's similar to the limitations experienced by the indigenous girls in Argentina in their village. So that possibility, or that chance for those girls when Carmen arrives, the chance for those girls to discover this whole new world, and the fact that she's able to pass this on to them, that instantly reminded me of a story that Carmen told me, which really hit home to me. And it's, well, allow me to tell you an anecdote, Carmen. When she was young, the circus came to town. And she went to see if she could meet the artists, the young circus performers, to ask them how they did it, how they got into it. So that need to express yourself when everything seems possible. Instead of getting sad about that or feeling pain for that loss, I think what we need to do is take this strength and this energy with us wherever we go. We need to take this primordial desire to perform with us, and that's what Carmen does. And in terms of myself, which is what you asked me about, when I was 13, I was studying at a very prestigious school in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, which has an absolutely stunning library. And I remember dreaming that I was going to be a writer like Simone de Beauvoir. I didn't even know who she was. I'd never read a word of de Beauvoir, and I never read her until later life. But that's what childhood is all about. It's about that desire to leave a footprint, to leave a lasting legacy. And I think Carmen's search is my search. It's not about being the best artist, the best filmmaker, the best dancer. It's about being able to pass something on, about being able to teach younger people to have a dream.
Mm. But it's interesting because you have two very different forms of art. Carmen, dancing is always the present, the moment, and you, in a way, with the camera, it's always the past, because the minute you film, it's gone. So it's an interesting kind of way of bringing the two things kind of together.
No, porque mi profesión original...
No, because originally I was an editor.
Yeah.
Entonces, mi presente absoluto es...
So my absolute present is if I cry or I don't cry in a sequence that I'm cutting together.
True. So how much does the editor kind of interfere with the director in you?
Bueno, yo como montadora...
Well, as an editor, I always try to work with another editor. Firstly, because as an editor, I recognize the importance of another person's point of view. A lot of the time, directors tend to mistreat editors. In this particular case, I didn't want to edit the film myself, but we had a filming set up in Argentina and the pandemic hit. So I caught COVID right at the beginning. It wasn't serious, fortunately. I was locked down at home and I had a film that I didn't know if I was going to finish. So I got to work trying to stitch together the film with the material I had. And luckily, I managed to find a way. And Cristobal Fernandez, a friend of mine who's an editor, got on board. And in a few weeks, he managed to tweak the structure in a very significant way, and here we have the film. But in a moment of desperation, I started to doubt whether I could put the material together in a coherent way.
I'm afraid we're running out of time, so I would love to be able to bring kind of the audience in. Alex, have we got any questions from our audience?
We don't have any questions in English in the chat, but please post them there. Otherwise, Mar, do you have any other questions you want to add?
No, yo no veo ninguna pregunta.
No, I can't see any questions in the chat. I think we're all very moved by this talk. Oh, there's a question there. What is your next project, Lupe? Well, at the moment I'm getting into a very tricky situation. I'm writing for the same producer, which will take the format of a historical fiction series of 6 episodes. It's about a story that I found out about when I was filming Never Look Back. It's the story of Pedro Borges, who's an Andalusian who managed to pass as an Inca, and he was there for 3 years. So I'm getting into fiction in a very powerful way. But we have to get the funding, which is always the most difficult thing. But I'm very excited because this is a story that brings together issues that I've thought about for a long time. So it's a real pleasure to be able to get involved. Oh, there's lots of questions now. Are you ready? How do you relate to your characters during the process? I'm not talking about the relationship with the person themselves, but how do you relate with the characters? Do you have any limits that you won't cross when you're relating to these characters? No. But it also depends on what kind of project it is. I think the most important thing is respect. I think the key is not to impose a character on the person that they are not. In television, we often say that we need someone to say something that we want to say. Well, we can use a voiceover then. You can be your own character. I get the feeling that it's very difficult to find the tone that you need to have to be able to insert yourself into this world, into this life. And you have to understand that it's better to be a traveller than a tourist. A tourist goes about leaving rubbish behind them, making promises, saying things without reflecting. But in many cases, with many stories, we can't make promises that we won't be able to keep. And in this case, I think that people explain everything. You see the closeness in that. when we have a very colonial closeness, when we change realities, you have to know where to stop. You'll never do it perfectly, but you always have to be aware of who someone is, the colour of their skin and what that represents to them, etc. Well, we'll have to finish up because we're short on time, but I wanted to finish with a comment from Jessica, which says, thanks for this wonderful interview and thanks for your, thanks for moving us, thanks for everything you've said. I'm very moved by what you said. I've been your student in the past and I've learned from you to follow my dreams, so thank you very much. Oh, that's beautiful, thank you. So I'll always be grateful to you, to both of you, to Noé Mendelle and to Lupe. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks very much for everyone who's attended this wonderful masterclass, and Never Look Back is available until tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So we hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much to everyone and have a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lupe. Thank you, Carmen. Hope you come to Scotland. Do a masterclass also.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you to everyone.
Encantada.
Thanks for coming,
Gracias a
everyone.
todos por venir.